Well, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. The Thursday before Valentine's Day. And it's a cold one here in Epcot. Actually, I wish I was in Epcot. I'm here in St. Louis, but we can always pretend, right? We are going to get ready to record Mike in the Midwest today. Oh, Paige just texted me with a picture from the center court at South Carolina. We're not big fans of South Carolina's university. Yes, we need to. Mallory just texted back hashtag beat South Carolina because our women's basketball team, MIZ, plays South Carolina tonight. All right. It's been cool. Paige gets to travel with the team to every game this year, so she's super excited. So she's gotten pictures like it on the court of all the SEC venues, which is pretty neat for a lifelong college sports fan. Okay, so today is going to be a very topical discussion. We're talking snow days, snow day memories, and I get to talk about them from both sides of the coin as a student, and then even more importantly, as a teacher. How snow days were determined here in Missouri. What was the likelihood? What was different around the country, I think, about snow days and so forth. So we'll talk about snow day memories here. And then I want to get your snow day memories. All right, let's get in on this and get going. Welcome to episode number 34 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to the middle of February here as we record this show. It is February 11th, 2021. It's, of course, a Thursday. That's the day we put these shows out typically on the feed. I hope everybody is doing well and had a great Super Bowl Sunday last Sunday night. Maybe your team won, maybe your team lost, but more importantly, hopefully you had some good food, atmosphere, and just enjoyed a fun Sunday afternoon into the evening. And of course, right, we got to enjoy all the weekend memes on Twitter with him going through the tunnels and being lost. And I even had a little fun with that at Ricky's expense. I hope everybody's doing great, though. Thanks for tuning in, as always, to Mike in the Midwest here. We have fun with the show. Nothing serious, just little bonus episodes for our patrons. And I appreciate you guys so much. At the end of the show, I'm going to put out something that I think might be fun exclusively for our patrons because we couldn't do it for a huge audience. But I think that this is something that I've thought about doing, and I'll see if we can. And with Valentine's Day coming up, we'll see how this goes. And I just want to always give you a little extra because you guys are definitely helping keep the show going right now. And during this, 2020, 2021 year, I love the podcast. And, we started way back in 2008 and I could have never seen this coming. And I never want to give up the show because we love talking Disney, sharing memories and all that great stuff. But yeah, it's been a little crazy and we're going to make it through. But I appreciate your help. You guys are keeping the lights on definitely right now. All right. So before we get into today's topic of snow days, which is very topical because it is snowing actually right outside the podcast window as we speak. And we'll talk about how this week has been here in the Midwest. Let's jump back and get some feedback from last week's Mike in the Midwest, which was called Putting on a Podcast, where I kind of talk about what a week looks like as far as putting on the Be Our Guest podcast, how Ricky and I and Pam and Scott and everybody, how we connect, how we discuss show topics, how I edit the shows, what software I use, what hardware I use. How the show gets magically from, here in St. Peters, Missouri to your iPhone, maybe down in Australia. I still think it's magic. We believe in Disney, and I think half of the stuff is voodoo science magic stuff. It's amazing. I know it's all technology and it's all science, but it's still pretty magical to get, every morning when I wake up to get on the treadmill, I open up Pocket Casts, I pull down and it refreshes and it's like filled with goodness, some tech podcasts, some Disney podcasts, some retro stuff. I mean, it's just like, it's magical. I have friends ready to listen to and from all over the planet. And it's so, so cool. That's why I love podcasting. I always kind of thought it would be fun to be a radio DJ, and I'd still love to do that if I ever got the opportunity. It'd be so fun to be on the radio. But podcasting, literally, you could be heard anywhere on the planet at any time. Where if I was a DJ here in St. Louis on a terrestrial radio station, while, I could cover the St. Louis market, I wouldn't be hitting Memphis or Chicago or Kansas City or anything. It's just, there's limitations. And with a podcast, it's magic. You can be out there and you can listen to stuff that you love that, maybe it isn't meant for a wide audience. Maybe that's our show too. All right. So let's get some feedback from the show last week real quick. It's Dennis Keithley, my good friend. The force is definitely with Dennis. Thanks for being a patron. He says, another good episode. Always like to hear what other podcasters use. I'm currently using a Blue Yeti microphone. Uber Conference is my discussion and recording tool. Audacity to edit. And Libsyn is my host. Your explanations were straightforward and your tips were good ones. Thanks for sharing. If you don't know, Dennis does, and he's part of like a bunch of Star Wars podcasts. Now, I love Star Wars, okay? Because I was born in 73. Star Wars, New Hope came out in 77. So it's definitely a part of my childhood. Dennis knows unbelievable amounts. I listened to some of his podcasts and I was a little blown away because I don't know the Clone Wars. I don't know any of the cartoon stuff. I don't know all the canon. I know the major movies, but I don't know the TV shows. I watched The Mandalorian, but I've watched every show one time. I haven't broken it down to know, the Ahsoka Tano. I know she was in there for a while. I didn't know where she came from. I knew she was in a cartoon. He knows all this stuff, and he knows if you're a Star Wars fan, you need to listen to Dennis's shows. And so, Dennis, please put your here in the patron, maybe in the comments below. Let everybody know the name of your show so they can check it out, because I know you put on one, but I know you're part of other ones. So put that out there so I can check that out. All right, my good friend Chris Armstrong, salute. I appreciate you. One of my great folks over at the Magic for Less. He said, just great episode. Thanks, Chris. Jennifer Sheldon enjoyed the episode. She says, I found BOGP via Apple Podcasts and subscribed through it to yours and others. Just curious why Pocket Casts is your podcast app of choice. I'm not familiar with the differences among all the platforms. Thanks. That's a good question. Why do I use Pocket Casts over, say, the Apple podcast app? Or I've used a ton over the years, because again, I've been listening to podcasts since about 2005. Pocket Cast it has a lot of options, and it just seems, I don't know, it looks nice aesthetically, and it just seems what you can do too. I think the thing that sells me on it is that you can make filters. And so I have an unplayed filter. So if I haven't played it, it goes into a list, and then I can rank my podcasts and it'll put them in that order. It can auto download them, or you can just get the feed. And if you want to download it, you download it. If you think that show's not good that week, you don't have to download it. I set mine to all download. It doesn't matter. I got a big iPhone. But it does everything that I need. Now, Apple's podcast app, if you have an iPhone, works really well too. And the advantage to using the Apple one is that it is, built into Siri. So you could ask Siri to play something for you, and it would, and that's the app it would use. Apple's getting better about letting third-party apps do kind of stuff like this, but I don't think Pocket Cast can do that yet. But Pocket Cast it's just a really nice app. It does everything. I know some people use Overcast. There's so many podcasts. People listen on Stitcher or on TuneIn or iHeartRadio. It doesn't matter. Spotify. As long as you're listening, I'm happy. I just love you taking the time to listen. But Pocket Cast is a great app. I think it was sold recently to NPR, the National Public Radio, but I think they're getting ready to sell it again. So who knows? But it works well, and it's got a really cool looking dark mode. Kathy Melchin, thanks for being a patron, says, great episode. The behind the scenes about the podcast was interesting. And I'm really old. In my first job out of college, we didn't use regular computers. She says she was a secretary. We used Wang word processors with 12-inch floppy disks. Yikes. You know what is crazy about this, Kathy? No kidding. I was on the treadmill this morning. As I'm recording this on Thursday morning, I was on the treadmill listening to a podcast. I was listening to the tech guy, who is Leo Laporte. He does a 3-hour call-in show on technology every Saturday and Sunday, and he puts it out as a podcast. And I am not kidding. One of the callers today called in and talked about his Wang word processor that he used back in the day. And he kept talking about these huge disks that he had to use to try to keep the thing running. He kept saying it wouldn't run. It kept breaking down. He had to have the people come out and work on it all the time. But he kept talking about these great big disks. And now I knew of 8-inch floppy disks, right? I used 5 1/4-inch floppy disks back in the day when I ran my Commodore 64 BBS. I had like 4 or 5 1541 5.25-inch disc drives. And then when I got really fancy, I got a 1581, which was a 3.5-inch disc drive. Now, I do remember, though, if you ever watched the movie, and we watched this last weekend, actually, if you ever watched the movie War Games, he in his bedroom, he puts in these 8-inch floppies, right? They're huge looking. He puts those in to call into the school computer. And Leo Laporte kept saying, yeah, it had these huge 8-inch discs. And the caller kept saying, I think they were bigger than 8-inch discs. He kept saying, I think they were like 12-inch. And you just nailed it right here. He said they were 12-inch floppies. So exactly, that's crazy. They just hours ago, I was again listening to a podcast where we were having the discussion on exactly what Kathy said here in the Patreon comment. So thank you so much for those comments. I appreciate those. Please leave your comments for today's show below, and we'll share those on next week's show. But today's show, let's talk snow days. Now here, this is kind of a fun show for me because I get to talk about a snow day from two different points of view, right? I get to talk about a snow day from the perspective that almost every kid that is not from a tropical locale has. This is part of your childhood. I guess if you're in Florida, you don't have this. Maybe you have hurricane days. I don't know. This is what the discussion I want to have. But if you grew up anywhere where it got cold in the wintertime, as a kid, you probably had a similar experience, but depending on your age, it could be similar to mine or it could be very, very different. So let's go back and talk about some of my memories from snow days and how things went as a student. And then I'll talk to you about what it was like as a teacher, which was, in my opinion, way more important for snow days when I taught. Okay, so when you're a kid, I went to, first of all, I started off going to kindergarten and first grade in public school. It was called Duchesne Elementary. It was here in it was in the Ferguson Florissant School District, where I taught for years and years, where my wife still teaches. And, just your typical local K-6 school. It was in the neighborhood, 2 blocks down from my house. Everybody that lives around went there, unless you went to the Catholic school. And pretty basic stuff. Now, I will tell you that as a kid, I don't think you really start to appreciate or get excited about a snow day until maybe about 2nd or 3rd grade. I think like kindergarten, 1st grade, you just kind of, you get up in the morning and your parents tell you there's no school and you just kind of hang out and there's not a whole lot to it. But I will guess, is I think back in my memories, because I started 2nd grade at a private school called North County Christian. I went to that school for 2nd to 6th grade. And most of my snow day memories are from going to North County Christian School. Now, there is a disadvantage to going to a small private Christian school when it comes to snow days. Because, okay, here's the thing. And this is going to be how it's so different nowadays. Things have evolved like 7 steps from where I was as a kid. Here was what you did. Okay, so as a kid, I always was enthralled with weather. I love big thunderstorms, and I still do. I wish I could have been a meteorologist because that's why I love Florida. I love a good thunderstorm. We stayed down there during Hurricane Charlie in 2004 just so I could be in a hurricane for once in my life. I've seen tornadoes here in the Midwest. I mean, it's just, weather is amazing, how the planet interacts, how the atmosphere is alive. I love it. And always did, even as a kid. Now, I will say that like in that grade, like 2nd to 6th grade, when you start to, it gets to be December, it gets to be January in the Midwest, in Missouri, where I grew up. That's when the snow can start happening. Typically, I would think that the snow could, start happening around November, the end of November. My birthday's the end of November. That's usually when, okay, now, the snow season is officially on. It's usually from like maybe late November until early April in St. Louis that it could snow. So what happens is as I recall from elementary school, that, you would hear of a snowstorm coming in, on the weather, on the news, the weatherman would talk about it. And there's always this chance. And the thing about St. Louis is it's really hit or miss on our snow forecasts. Sometimes they'll forecast like we're going to get a foot. We got a winter storm warning. It's going to be crazy. And we don't get a flake. And then sometimes, and this might happen where you live, but sometimes, they'll call for like, dusting to an inch. You wake up and there's 6 inches out there and it's just like, whoa, you weren't expecting that. But as a kid, that day before the snow day was always exciting. Like there was like a buzz around the school, like, oh, it might be off tomorrow. This would be great. And so as kids, we started making plans for the snow day. And of course, as a kid in the 1980s in elementary school, our plans always revolved around, if we have a snow day, we're going to get together and go sledding somewhere. Now, the disadvantage, again, of going to a private school was that we didn't all live on the same street or in the same neighborhood. We were really spread out, the folks that went to this private elementary school from all over, different school districts all over town. So it was a little bit hard to get together, but we did a few times on snow days. And so you would start to make plans, and you would just hope, please let us be off, so we can go sledding and we can do this. We can go to each other's house, play the computer, Atari, whatever it was. And then honestly, you would like pray, like, please, God, let there be snow. Because I mean, for one thing, snow's fun. Just to get snow, even if you didn't get snow day, it was awesome. But when you got a snow day, it was like a gift from God. Like you didn't have to go to school on a Wednesday, and you could just go sledding and have fun with your friends. I mean, on a Wednesday or a Monday or a Tuesday or a Thursday or Friday, it was the best ever. I mean, it was. And so here's what you would, so when you're younger, you still go to bed through, your bedtime and so forth, but you would get up super early the next morning, right? First thing you do is peek out the window and you'd see, some days you would see no snow on the ground. You'd still see the grass. You'd see the street. And you're just like, oh, I hate the weather, man. We're going to school. And then you would try to go back to sleep, and typically you couldn't. So that next day, if you didn't get the snow and you didn't have a snow day, brutal. Everybody at school is crabby. You didn't want to be there. You want to be sledding. You have no snow. Blah. And when I come to find out, the teacher was probably mad too, because they wanted a snow day worse than I did. I didn't know that at the time. Now, so here's how you found out back in my day if you were getting a snow day. And this is what everybody did in St. Louis. So you turned on your old AM radio, your crackly old AM radio. And I always had an AM radio in my bedroom because my grandpa gave me an old beat up radio. And I used to listen to all AM talk radio. When I was a kid, I was a geek. I listened to this station. It's called KMOX 1120. And it's like they call itself the voice of St. Louis. It's the station that has the Cardinals. Back in the day, it had the Blues, had the football Cardinals. So it had all the sports call-in shows. It was the news station for St. Louis. It was basically like the voice. It was the voice of St. Louis, still is. So what you would do back then is you would tune in to like the 5 a.m. newscast, and they would do the news, they'd talk about the streets and the roads and the airport being closed or whatever. But then they would be like, it 20 past, we're going to do our school closings. And so you'd be all amped up, right? And so then they would go through all these school districts and all these schools from St. Louis that were closed. Now, St. Louis this station had a huge geographic footprint. It's a 50,000 watt station, which means it covers almost down to the boot heel. It covers probably almost out to Columbia. I mean, it's probably 120-mile radius, like all around to broadcast to during the day. Now, at night, the station goes all the way to Cuba. It's called the 50,000 watt fire hose. I mean, it covers almost the continental United States, but in the daytime, it covers most of the state of Missouri. And this was the way everybody announced their school closings. So the thing is, like, you would get all amped up, like, okay, here come the school closings. And there were so many, like the two radio, announcers would alternate back and forth. Afton School District closed. Alton School District, snow schedule. And they would just go through, and Bethalto School District closed. And so, you had all this anticipation, because it was like there were so many school districts. And I'm so glad that I went to Ferguson Florissant for the first couple of years, because at least that's in the F's. And so you knew kind of early, like if you were going to be on or off, and you did not want to hear snow schedule, because that meant you're just going to school an hour later. Big deal. You wanted closed. And so they would get there, and later on I went to Hazelwood School District, so that wasn't too bad. And so when you heard those words as a kid, and again, I went to North County Christian, so that was in the end. So that was way down there. And the thing was, I lived in the Ferguson, Florissant, and Hazelwood School District. So when I was in elementary school for most of my years, I would hear if the people in my school district the kids in my neighborhood were off before I was, like Ferguson, Florissant, and Hazelwood, I would know like closed. And then I would just be like, oh, please let North County Christian School be closed. And the thing was, we didn't have buses because we were a small school. So we didn't have buses. Everybody's carpooled. And we only had one class per grade. So it was really small. And so the thing was, we didn't have to worry about buses being on the road. So a lot of times they get to North County Christian School and they'd say, open. I was like, oh no. But then some days when we got a good snow, North County Christian School closed. And when it was closed, it's like, woo. And the thing was, you're up now. It's like 5:35 in the morning. You've gotten up super early. Normally you wouldn't get up till 7:30. You don't care. Sometimes you try to go back to sleep, but a lot of times you were so excited you couldn't even go back to sleep because you got this unexpected free day. Now, one of the things, I'll give you a couple things that I did in elementary school as I got a snow day. Sometimes I would stay over at my grandma and grandpa's house, which they lived in Florissant with me, probably about 5 minutes away. And it was always fun to stay over at grandma and grandpa's because they had a driveway that was on a hill. Now, it wasn't a big driveway. Again, I was a little kid, probably maybe 30, 50 feet long, but it was on a hill. And so I would take my little sled over. And as a kid, I had a couple of sleds that I really liked. One was like a hard plastic, kind of looked like a toboggan. It was blue with like a rope in the front. You could pull it up the hill. And that one was okay, but it didn't slide as well. But I don't know if you ever got one of these as a kid. It was basically just a piece of plastic that had two kind of holes in the front of it, like handles, and it rolled up. It was like, plastic that was thin, like a sheet of plastic, almost hard plastic, but you could roll it up and put it like in the back of a car. But then you would just sit on the thing. It was just, again, like a roll up piece of plastic. This was blue too. And this thing would cook. And so I would take that over to grandma and grandpa's and I would sled down the driveway and I'd stay with them all day. Grandma would make chicken noodle soup and grilled cheese for lunch. And the thing was, my grandpa, he always, like, one of his things he did, he was a cement mason, just like my dad, but he was also in charge of cutting the grass at our church for as long as I remember grandpa being around. And the thing was, our church growing up was the largest Baptist church in the state of Missouri. It had a lot of ground. It was in Ferguson, Missouri. And so grandpa, it would take him about 2 days to cut the grass every time he cut it. He couldn't cut it in one day, even with a riding lawnmower. He cut some with a rider, cut some with a push, trimmed and all that stuff, but it was always looking good for Sundays. But it took him at least 2 days to cut it each time he cut it. Anyway, he always had nice like lawn equipment because he used it a ton. But he got one of the very first snow blowers I'd ever seen. It was a John Deere. He loved his John Deere stuff. Snowblower. And this thing was like the coolest. I'd never seen a snowblower as a kid. He got that sucker out on one of those good snows and blew the driveway after I sledded on it. And it was just like the coolest thing. It shot that snow so high up in the air and landed over in the neighbor's yard and had these big piles on the outsides of the driveway. And the driveway was just clean. I mean, it looked smooth. It was better than shoveling. It was amazing. So grandpa had the snowblower. I also remember one of the things we would do is if we got somebody to take us, we'd go sledding, but we would go to a place called Killer Hill. Now, if you're from St. Louis, you may know of Killer Hill. That's what we called it. And actually what's ironic is Killer Hill was on the campus of where I taught for my last 9 years of teaching at the Gifted Education Center. It was located, back in the day, it was called Florissant Junior High, but it was right across from the Florissant Civic Center. And it was this big hill, and it was big. I mean, it was probably a couple 100 feet down. I mean, it was a big hill. Playground at the top, Parker Road Elementary, kind of sitting on top of the hill where I taught actually my very first year. And when it was snowy, man, it was packed. There'd be hundreds of kids there from North County, from Florissant. And we all sledded, and people would build ramps at the bottom, and you would sled for hours at Killer Hill. So if you're from North County, you may know of Killer Hill. And I bet if you're not even from Missouri, you have a quote Killer Hill somewhere in your life. Where did everybody congregate to go sledding? Because that was so much fun. Now, as we're recording here live on YouTube, my good friend Jennifer, who is also here from St. Louis, says, now kids at our school flush an ice cube, sleep with spoons under the pillow, and wear pajamas backwards. She says she only remembers praying for a snow day. I'll give you what I told my kids to do every year, every time there was snow in the forecast. Okay, so that's another thing we would do. And as a kid, so once we got to like 5th or 6th grade, I've kind of mentioned that I used to get my money for software, for programs and stuff for my computer. I would get that by cutting grass in the summer. I would cut and trim $7 front and backyard. That was my deal. But my buddy Ryan and I, who lived across the street from me, In the wintertime, we were very enterprising and we'd go around, of course, like everybody does, and we'd shovel driveways. Now, this was super hard work. We do this for about the same price. I can't remember what we'd charge, but we would shovel driveways and sidewalks and so forth to get people out. And it was a great way to kind of have some fun, but also make some money and be enterprising on a snow day. So there were many days where we go out, shovel a couple driveways, come home, eat lunch, get some hot chocolate, and go back out, shovel a couple more. And people were more receptive to that back in the day. I don't know, I wish we still did more of this today, but I think a lot of people nowadays maybe do have snow blowers, or I'll be honest, it has snowed here where I live for the last few days. We don't have a lot of snow on the ground, but we have like ice. We have like ice under the snow, and it's about an inch thick. But Mallory's had snow days for the last 3 days. She's been off Tuesday, Wednesday, today, just because it's a little tricky out there right now. And we live in a more rural area right now. But yeah, I drive a Jeep, and I'll tell you what, I didn't shovel my. We don't have a snow blower. My dad, ironically enough, bought one this year for the first time, and I don't know if he's used it or not. I'll have to ask him. But it's not very deep. The snow, there's not much there. It's kind of icy. But I drive a Jeep Wrangler, so I kind of like just driving over the top of it. I guess I should shovel it to be a good neighbor, but I haven't. I just leave it there. So I don't know how people do that. Okay, so that's kind of the stuff we did as kids. We would get excited. The whole thing was you had to listen to the radio, though, to find out if you were off school. Today, kids have it so easy, and so do the teachers. So let's look at it from the point of view from a teacher's perspective. I will tell you, honest to God, this snow days are rooted for 10 times harder by a teacher than by students. And you might think that's impossible, because as a kid, I thought there's no way anybody wanted a snow day more than me. And I like school, but I liked having a fun day off to go play, sled, have fun with my friends. It didn't matter. Play on the computer all day, whatever. Nope. Teachers want the snow days more than the kids. Because one, a lot of districts like ours, when I was teaching here in St. Louis and where my wife teaches, the way it works is they build in snow days into the schedule. So the thing is, in our district, if you didn't use your snow days, we didn't get them back. Some school districts, if you don't use your snow days, you get to get out a couple days early at the end of the school year. A lot of school districts in St. Louis do this. Ours did not. So if you got a snow day or 2 or 3 during the wintertime, you were basically paid for free days to be off. Like, you didn't have to work that day, but they didn't change your salary or anything. So it was like, bonus days off where you're getting paid for time off. So that was always awesome. But also, the time of year where a snow day typically happens here in the Midwest is usually January, February. Sometimes it was March. And that's like, if you ever worked in education, those are the hardest months of the year. I mean, you're too far from summer to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you're like dug in, man. It's like school's not new and fun anymore. It's like, it's a real challenge to keep your kids motivated. At this point, you're kind of shifting to the standardized testing preparation, which is never fun. There's not a lot of holidays to look forward to. There's just not a lot going on. So a snow day is like a gift from God when it comes to teachers in, say, this time of year, February. So now I do remember some memories as teachers so when I started as a teacher back in 99, 2000, we had what was called the snow chain. And so this is the way that we found out if we had a snow day or not. You would get, during O week, we called it orientation week, which was that week where teachers came back before students to get ready for the school year. The principal or the secretary would dish out in all of our mailboxes. We had the main office, and you had like a little cubby. It was your mailbox where you got all your mail from school. And you pull that out, and it had the snow chain. And so it would have like the principal and the vice principal at the top. They would call the secretaries. The secretaries would each call 2 or 3 other people. And then each person goes down the chain. Guess who was always at the bottom of the chain? Last call. This guy. Because the thing is, you want to put the least reliable people at the bottom, because the last thing you need on a snow chain back in the day was that somebody gets the call. Hey, Mr. Allman. Yeah. Because you're getting the call usually at about 5 o'clock in the morning. This is Brenda Payton. Yeah, and that was my teacher across the hall, taught 5th grade. Hey, Brenda, what's going on? Snow day. I'm like, yes. don't go back to sleep. You got to call the next person. So if you're not on the bottom of the snow chain and you get excited and you just go back to bed because you got a snow day, the person under you will not get the call. So they would always put somebody that was likely to fall back asleep at the bottom of the list. Once they kind of knew the staff, it was always fun because my buddy Dave was always at the bottom. I was at the bottom. It was always the guys that would, now that I think about it, the guy teachers always ended up at the bottom of the list. Funny. Anyway, that was how we found out. Now, somewhere along the line, all of a sudden, and of course, the next morning it would be on KMOX on the radio. But at some point, the TV station started putting the lower third with the crawl, with all the closings that next morning. So instead of watching or listening, because the thing was on the radio, like if you missed it, you missed it. You had to wait like the next hour to the next update. So that was always a drag. So once they had the crawl at the bottom of the screen, channels 2, 4, 5, and so forth, our local news channels, that was so much better because you could just go in there and jump in. You could see, oh, dude, we're in the R's. Okay, so now I got to wait till it comes around the horn again. But it wasn't that bad because it was continuous. So we had to get that. But somewhere along the line, we started finding out about snow days a lot of times the night before, like before you would even go to bed. Like you would get the phone call, and now it's an automated phone call. I will tell you, with Mallory School District right now where we live, we get a text message, we get a voicemail. They put it on the website. I get an email. I mean, and it's on the news, it's on the radio, it's on TV. There's no way you could not know immediately that they're not having school. Back in the day, it was the radio only. That was it. Then it was TV and radio. Teachers found out on the snow chain. Now it's an automated call to the teachers, and that's kind of how it goes. A couple of quick stories, though, that I'll give from my teaching days. I always told my kids the night before, like when there was snow in the forecast, it didn't even matter if it was like a 10% chance of flurries. When I taught 6th grade, I told them, and we actually wrote this in our planners, you have to do the snow dance before you go to bed because Mr. Rahman needs a snow day and you need a snow day. And we'd have fun with that. They'd be like, Mr. Rahman every year, Mr. Rahman, what's the snow dance? And I'm like, you don't know what the snow dance is? They're like, no, Mr. Rahman, we don't know what the snow dance is. I'm like, oh, how do you not know? How have you got to be 12 years old in Missouri where we get snow every year? How do you not know what the snow dance is? And so what it was, there was no snow dance. But the thing was, I would have a kid come up finally and be like, okay, if you don't know, we're just gonna have to make up one for this year. We're just gonna have to make it happen. My kids were always a lot of fun that I taught. We always had a good time together. I always said that my class was a family. We were a family. We're going to get through these 9 months together. We're going to help each other out all the way through. And we need a snow dance, but we need a cool dance we can all do before bed. And so we'd make it up. And so, the last 10 minutes of the day, somebody would come up, and one kid I remember did the snake. Remember the snake from the 80s? He got down on the floor. He was all, and it was so funny. Daryl, I still remember Daryl. So that was the snow dance for that year, right? That was like the 2004 snow dance. Everybody and their parents were probably like, Mr. Rahman is nuts, because God help them if they did the snake in their bedroom before bed. But I told them, I'm like, if we didn't have a snow day that next day, we'd come back to school. I'm like, okay, who didn't do it? Who did not do the snow dance? You are the reason we are all here. You didn't do it. You didn't do it from your heart. It wasn't heartfelt. The snow gods didn't smile on us because you were not genuine. It's kind of like the Great Pumpkin and Charlie Brown. It was always fun. Now, as teachers, here's the thing. I will tell you one more story because we're getting a little bit long. It's supposed to be a mini podcast. But as teachers, so where I taught, our building was broken up into pods. It was a weird shaped school. It was all one level. It was Wedgwood Elementary in Florissant. And so we were broken up into pods. I taught in pod D, like Dumbo. I didn't even think about that. So pod D was all 5th and 6th grade classes. So we had 4 5th grades and 4 6th grades. But the thing was, there was like the core 4 teachers that we hung out all the time. It was myself. It was my great buddy, Dave, who was in my wedding. It was my wife, Pam, who was not my wife at the time, but she taught next door. And then her good friend who taught across the hall, she taught 5th grade with Dave. Her name was Beth. Now she lives out in Indiana. We did everything together. We did float trips. We did Christmases. We were always together all weekend, in the night, just all the time. We were always together. So there was one time I remember, the thing was, we'd always talk about, oh my gosh, Ken Earhart on Channel 4, the meteorologist says we're going to get snow. Dude, it's guaranteed, we'd say. So sometimes, we would all hang out and we'd be like, it'd be like Tuesday night. We're like, we're going to have a snow day tomorrow for sure. So we would, hang out at one of our apartments or our houses and, play board games or at a pool table back in the day. We just have a good time. We just hang out till like 1 or 2 in the morning, guaranteed. And, like we everybody get ready to leave, go home. And he'd be like, it ain't snowing yet. It's got to get going here shortly. And the thing was, every once in a while, and this is like one of those like where they're like, you're gonna get 12 inches of snow tomorrow, and nothing would happen. And we'd stay out too late because we trusted the weatherman, and we'd all be back at school the next day. And God help those students because we were all grouchy because we thought we were going to be off, and it just did not happen. The kids were mad because they didn't get a snow day, but the teachers were even worse. I do remember one time that we all went out to a Chinese buffet. And just all we did at the Chinese buffet right after school was watch the weather forecast over and over for about an hour as we sat there. We had the Weather Channel on. We asked them if we could have the remote, and we just watched the weather and just hoped and dreamed and stuff like that. And the thing was, like, there was always hope for an extra day off to have fun. Even as adults, teachers like to have fun. And so on snow days, we got together, and what did we do as teachers on our snow days? We went sledding. Now Paige was with us because Paige was around the whole time we all hung out. So it'd be Beth and Dave and myself and Pam, and we'd bring Paige along and we'd go sledding. We did. We went to a couple houses that we knew that had big hills, and we just had a good old time. So the lesson is, if there's any kids listening, teachers go sledding on snow days. Teachers want snow days as much as you. Teachers do crazy things for snow days, like invent snow day dances. And snow days are gifts from heaven. I will just say that as a teacher. All right. So that's going to be our discussion on snow days. Now, what I want to hear is, what was how did it work out for you where you grew up? If you grew up from somewhere, where it wasn't snow, did you guys get hurricane days, or what kind of days did you, like, unexpected possible days off in the middle of the year? Let me know in the comments below. Or how did you find out about your snow days? What did you do with your snow days? I love hearing this stuff to share for next week. Okay, a couple announcements here real quick for our patrons. On Sunday night, this Sunday night, we're not going to have a live show, Colin, because it is Valentine's Day, and I'm not going to get anybody in trouble by having you tune into the show on Valentine's night. That's not a good idea. So we'll continue the live call-in shows on Sunday night, February 21st. And you might have seen the announcement on the Discord channel. Scott is going to be joining us every Sunday night from now to take your calls with me. So we'll be talking about the news of the week, rumors and stuff like that, and taking your calls. So if you want to bounce anything off Scott, he will be there with us as well. One other thing I was thinking of, now I don't know how quickly I can get on this, but I want to do something special for our patrons. And again, I will do the best I can with this. I'm only one guy working a full-time job and everything, but I want to give you something. And this is something I thought we could do. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a website called cameo.com. What it is, it's a place where it's not famous people, but it's like, it's kind of like people from TV or radio or the movies. There's a lot of famous people on there, but what it is where you can get a personalized message from, for example, there's people from The Amazing Race or Big Brother or Survivor, where you can get a personalized message from one of the contestants that you were a big fan of. And they will send you a message, like a 1-minute video message to somebody, is like a birthday gift or something. And it'll just, send a shout out to that person. And they talk about, what happens is you write in with like what you're celebrating, what accomplishment you've just had in your life. There's no way I would ever go on Cameo. That's for famous people. Not me. But if there's somebody in your life, like a child, like maybe one of your kids listen to the show, maybe a significant other, and you think that would be something fun that you would like, I'd be more than happy to do this for our patrons. So just shoot me an email and let me know the person's name, a little background on them, like something I can use to kind of say, oh man, I hope it's going great at Happy Joe's Pizza, or whatever. Give me a little background. I'll give them a shout out, make a little video for them and email it to you. And that way you can give it to them as a kind of like a little personalized surprise. It's not a big deal, but I'm trying to think of fun things to do for our patrons. So if you would like one for yourself or for a child or a significant other, whoever it is, a friend, make sure that listen to the show. That'd be kind of weird if they got one, they don't know who I am, but I would be more than happy to do that. Give me a little turnaround time because I might get a couple. So I'd like to do that for you. So I'm just trying to think of ways to say thank you for being a patron, because I sure appreciate you guys. All right, this one got a little bit long, but I'm going to jump out of here. We'll be back again next Thursday. Hope everybody's being safe and staying well, and we'll see you real soon. Bye, everybody. Hey, Herschel.